I was doing. It was just like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of ways right now. Let me get it out.
Yeah.
That I'm like, you know what, maybe I should really be more intentional about this. And maybe this is something like, if I'm going through it, other women might be going through it, or men. And people may benefit from it. Because sometimes when you're sitting with those emotions, you feel like you're the only one going through it. You know what I'm saying? And it
Yeah.
makes it harder because you're going like back and forth with yourself, like, what's wrong with me? Is this normal? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But once you hear somebody else has experienced the same thing, you kind of can take a deep breath and like, okay, I can release this. I have somebody to talk about it with. I have somebody to relate to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's very much a journal, and I wanted to keep it that way, as it evolved into like, oh, I'm going to make this a book. I still wanted to keep it in that raw journal, diary type of a format. Because one, I feel like it's easier to read, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Two, I think it keeps that relatability and that vulnerability just authentic.
You know what? It hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute. Wait. I didn't tell her. Wait a minute.
Right,
I did
right.
a lot of wait a minutes. Like,
You don't read my diary. You know what I'm saying?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this experience. When my kids were born, I only have two, and they're born 2 years apart. And it's like it. I wanted to. I wanted to stay home with them. Right.
Yeah.
I think in some ways my experience was like exact opposite. But I hadn't
Yeah.
gotten started in anything that I really wanted to be in at work. Right.
Right.
So I wanted to stay home with them. I wanted to be with them. I didn't want to miss any time. And I knew almost immediately I wouldn't have that chance. Like
Yeah.
yeah, and I remember working and just looking and seeing other mothers home with their kids. And I went through a few years where I had them, that real boring
Yeah.
phase when they
Yeah.
don't actually say anything that like adds to the conversation, but they're your kids, right? And then I had to go back to work, and I was real bitter. And the feelings that you had when you had to kind of stop and slow down and it just accept I'm gonna be home. I was like, oh my gosh, it's the same thing. It's the same thing.
So beautiful for me to hear, because I have had a lot of stay-at-home moms say that they felt that way. I've had a handful of working moms. My mom was a working mom,
Hmm.
so she's like, I went through a lot of these emotions, but not in the same way. So it is very interesting for me to hear that, right? Because I didn't get that side of it. Although I did go back to work for some time
Hmm.
after I had my daughter, and just the balance of that was so off, and so we kind of were able to sit down and be like, okay, how do we make this work? I can't do it all.
Yeah.
But then once that was gone, I was just like, okay, well, so much of my purpose was caught up and wrapped up in what I was doing for work, and
Hmm.
not, like, so it was kind of like, okay, well, now what? And not that mothering wasn't enough, but it was very different, it's like
Right.
being a mom, it is very purposeful. It is one of the most, if not the most important job that all of us will ever have. But on a day-to-day basis, when you're, you know, trying to talk to a toddler and they're screaming, and you're doing naps and feeding and the same cycle over and over, it's
Over and
just
over.
what am I doing with my life? It just feels like, what am I doing with my life? And you kind of lose sight of how important it really truly is in that moment. And so
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that, because that's beautiful for me to hear, and I think for other working moms to hear
Hmm.
that, it's not just a stay at home mom issue. Like it's also harder on the other end when you want to be home.
Yeah.
And I understand that as well, because my mom and also a lot of different coworkers, as I was trying to make that decision, what do I do? They were so supportive in that, like, so many people want that option. And I
Yeah.
was like, you're right. So I was appreciative of that, but at the same time, it felt like I was losing
Yes.
something. And on the other end, you felt the same way. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you had to grieve that, that loss of like, I don't have that decision. So
Right.
I
It,
have to let that go for now.
yeah.
So
It's all
yeah.
that expectation that you build up for life, and then things
Yeah.
go the
The
exact opposite way. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Question: what is in your book? Wow, you go through so much. You go through so much, and all of it hurt. It's like,
Right.
it's very cathartic to to have
Yeah.
words that you need to say that you can't say be
Yeah.
there for you. So I loved it. I really did love what I was able to get through before today. Yes. What was there a chapter that meant like more to you than?
You know what? Envy was hard. Envy was really hard.
I was
And
gonna ask.
yeah, actually, in my book release, I I kind of read out loud. I'm sorry, babies are in the background. You can hear them.
Oh, my neighbors, I don't know what they're doing right now. It's like
Okay.
they're rebuilding their whole house. So I understand.
Um, so I read a few things out loud, and it's one thing to write it down. And when I got my book, I would read it, but that was really my first experience reading it to an audience, right? And so that's like a whole nother layer of vulnerability. And I sobbed like all the way through it because I'm just like, you write it out on paper and you kind of release it in that moment, and you try and like let it go a little bit, but it's still there, like.
Yeah.
And that is another thing that people have come to me like, well, now you've arrived, you've accomplished, now you've resolved, right? And I'm like, I have, but it's still a work in progress. Like
Progress.
some days I have conquered envy, and some days I'm right back into that chapter, and I'm that girl again, going to the pool party and evaluating myself, and you know what I mean. And like, so it's always a work in progress. I don't think these things, especially these things, right? They're
Hmm.
hard. They're something that you kind of continually, you might get to the finish line faster the second time, but at
Hmm.
the same time, it's still a race you're going to have to go through and go and be in. And every time you may be a little quicker, you may be a little better, you may get through it a little easier, but I'm still working through it. But envy, I think, is one of the hardest. Just being um a black girl growing up in Utah. It I am who I am because of it, and
Hmm.
I grew a lot because of it, but I had to go through a lot of hard things and a lot of hard emotions to get to where I am today, to build that confidence. And that envy sits with me still, even as I go places now. My first mind is like, oh, what are they going to think of me? You know what I mean? Like I kind of go back to that place, and I have to remind myself, like, no, we're not gonna we're not gonna do that. You're gonna be who you are. And those who will accept you for that will accept you for that, and those who don't, it's not a loss. You know what I mean? It's like I kind of have to coach myself through that, but it's just hard. It's hard to admit that when you look in the mirror, even though other people may admire you, you don't admire yourself. That's
Right.
a really hard truth to deal with, that it really starts inside, you know what I mean? And to,
Yes.
to look at myself and to look at my reflections and to see nothing but things that I did not like about myself, like that was that was really hard.
It's like a stone on your chest
Yes.
every day. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And I think as women, right? Like we just do that to ourselves. We do that to ourselves time and time again. And we're hard on ourselves. Society makes it hard
Yes.
for us. We're
Yeah.
constantly comparing ourselves. We're constantly looking at Instagram reels of everybody's highlights of their lives and going like, man, they got it
Yeah.
all together, not understanding what's really going on behind those photographs, right?
Right.
And it's really hard. And women in particular, we internalize it all. And so for me, it's still a work in progress. Even as I write this book, I'm like,
Hmm.
man, I look at the Brene Browns of the world and the Rachel Hollises, and not that I need to be on their level, but you're like, man, if that's my goal, like I feel so far away from them. When I went to go put the rib out there and make my Instagram handle, and I'm like putting my quotes out there, I'm like, man, are people even gonna take me serious? You know what I'm saying? When they
Yeah.
have all of this, what feels like the Alex L's of the world. You know what
Right.
I'm saying? Like, all of these
Yeah.
people who are already doing what I'm trying to do, it makes you feel like, where do I fit in? You know, and so
Yes.
then you go back and you're finding yourself in that envious space, and I have to step back and separate myself from that emotion and say, hey, look, you know what I mean? There's room for all of us. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
my value may be different than Alex L and Brene Brown, but I still have value. So
You
that
know,
was hard.
again, like you are speaking like all the secrets of my heart. I'd like you to just, maybe pull some, just don't tell everybody. I mean, from the minute you started to right now. But let's go back real quick because you talked about something that it feels very unique, like being a Black girl in Utah.
Yeah.
So I'm also in Utah, but I didn't grow up here. I grew up in Hawaii and I grew up in Colorado, but I grew up around people where nobody looked like me, right?
Yeah. Right. So
And
similar experience.
yes, exactly, exactly. No one looks like you. And so then in those same ways that everybody else seems to get promotion, seems to get noticed, you don't, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, sometimes, when I did have situations where I was promoted or where I, for nursing school, for example, when I was
Yeah.
accepted into nursing school, you wouldn't believe how many comments were like, well, that black girl, that black girl card worked this time, like as if I wasn't smart enough,
Enough.
needed the numbers, right? Or the
Yes.
hitting the diversity quota for them, which who knows, may have been true, but at the same time, I did the work.
You did the work, right? It's your work was discounted.
Position to get there.
Hmm.
So to take that back by saying like that was the only reason I was there is frustrating. It's defeating. It's like nobody really sees you,
Right.
and you don't really see yourself because you're so busy trying to fit in and
Hmm.
trying to blend in. And it's silly to me now, and I want my daughter and my son to know, like, it's perfectly okay to stand out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I
Yeah.
hope we grow up in a better situation where kids really do want to just be,
Who they are. Yeah.
who they are, because growing up, during our time, people just wanted to blend in, and I just wanted to blend in. I remember going to visit like family
Mhm.
in on the East Coast and in like Atlanta and Georgia and stuff, and where it's predominantly black,
Yeah.
or
And you can disappear.
you disappeared. And I
Yes.
was like, this feels so good. And they were like, what? And
What?
no, I don't want to be stared at. I don't want people touching my hair, asking me how that happens, and
Hmm.
how do I do that, and can I touch it, and can I felt like a zoo animal sometimes. As harsh as that sounds, it just feels like you walk anywhere and you're just stared at, and you're just like, I mean, not that everybody's intentions are bad. It's just hard to always feel,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
cast. And so, yeah, I think it is hard. And growing up as a young child, you in Utah, specifically,
Yes.
where the religion is also different than my religion, how I grew up,
Mhm.
with my beliefs. I didn't fit in there either. So there was two big boxes in the state that I didn't check, and so
Yeah.
that already took me out of a lot of circles. And that was hard. It's hard to always feel like you have to defend yourself and defend a group of people
And
and
explain who you are.
explain who you are. It's hard
Mhm.
to do that. And while I feel like at this point in time it made me stronger, so to speak, I
Yeah.
do feel like there are elements where it's just heavy, and so
Hmm.
even like going through this particular time, it's brought up again a lot of emotions, just processing like, wow, thinking back, like growing up and feeling like I had to speak for a group of people and help people understand, but no one was listening. you know?
Right. Right.
And maybe a few people were listening. I shouldn't say no one, but it just felt like
Few
nobody.
and far between.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
Um, and so now to kind of circle back around and have to, recall and feel some of those old emotions, it feels very similar.
Yeah.
And yeah, in Utah, it's just like, people talk about, and I've been asked a lot, like, how do we help that? I'm like, well, you speak to your kids about race and about how people look different and about acceptance,
Hmm.
But what's hard, right, is like for me, um, I was growing up, I felt different. The other kids were like, why is she brown skinned? And I'm thinking, why am I brown skinned? But they don't have that same feeling. They feel
Yeah.
like their skin is the right skin because that's what's all around them. It's
Yes.
not
Yeah.
necessarily a belief, it's just that's what's around them. Now,
Round.
if you surround kids with a lot of diversity, then it's like, oh, we're all different. And that's kind of innate. Like you can point it out, you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? You can point it out. Oh, she has brown skin. She has light brown skin. She has white skin.
Hmm.
And it feels different. But when you're constantly surrounded with differences, then it's like, oh, well, we're all different.
Different. Right.
When you're surrounded by the same thing and somebody is different, then it feels like one is right and one is wrong, or one is the norm and one is not the norm.
Not. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think dealing with that as the kid who is not the norm is just a heavy burden to walk and to help people understand and to answer questions like, why does your skin look like poop? Or do you taste like chocolate? Which sounds really cute, right? But it's it's hard for kids,
Right.
it's hard.
Yes.
So, I mean, I had a great, I had great experiences. I had
Hmm.
great friends. I wasn't like an outcast and didn't have anybody. So I won't say that. And so in that way, my experience, I had a lot of great friends, but we didn't, and that's what I'm trying to help some of them understand now as their eyes are opening to some of these racial injustices
Hmm.
and where our kind of our world is sitting right now in society. It has not done their due diligence to move us forward and
Yeah.
to level up, so to speak. um, they're like, well, what could I have done better? I've always been your ally. And I'm like, I know that you have, but at the same time, how often did we talk about race? How often did we talk about my experiences as, a Black girl in Utah? We didn't. You just
Yeah.
assumed I was good because that's the face that I had to put on. I wasn't
Hmm.
always, and I didn't do the best in my ability to always express that because I felt like there was judgment waiting on the other side of that. There was defense waiting on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And so now I do feel like this moment is a little different in that people are ready to listen and people are ready to show up, I hope, with more of an open heart and an open mind, not to come in defending themselves, but to come in understanding, where another person is coming from. So,
I find it very interesting that the only thing you are asking for here is the willingness to listen with
yeah,
understanding. Isn't that crazy? And that's like the only thing. If you
yeah,
just make the effort to try to understand that my experiences are not the same as yours,
right.
and just let it be that,
And
right?
just, yeah, yeah. And just let it be that. You're absolutely right. Because that is the fact of the matter. Like some of the things that I may be suppressing, you don't realize because it's
Mhm.
just a part of what we have to do,
Yes.
and so we haven't talked about it. It doesn't mean I wasn't going through it though.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think envy is hard and it is one that as I raise my children, I just want to build them up as much as I can
Yeah.
because I know that there will come times where they're comparing themselves and they
Yeah.
are looking at the climate of society in the
Hmm.
world and going, hey, well, where is our value here? And I do feel strongly like that stuff starts at home. And now listen, my parents, they tried, and even my mom, she called me because I didn't let them. I told them I'm writing a book. Read it until, because I just didn't want any input or anything. I'm like, let me do it.
That's the best way to give them
You know what I mean?
anxiety. Yes.
My head, right? Don't let me in my head before I get it out.
Right.
Once it's done, I'll let you read it and everything. And they were so supportive of that. And my mom read it. She called me. She's like, I love it. I love it, daughter. You did an amazing job. But I read it as a mom, and then I read it as just as a woman. And as a woman, I loved it. As a mom, I'm having a hard time because why didn't I know some of these things? How could I have helped you? And so I'm like, but that's just it, right? Like parents want to do everything they can for their children, but sometimes I'm like, but mom, I didn't tell you I was experiencing this. We didn't talk about it. You know what I mean? And some things you don't talk about to your parents when you're a certain age because you're just like, they won't understand. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh, but they don't. So there's
right.
that.
And so for her, she was like, I went through similar. She grew up in a small town. She's Cuban, so my background is Hispanic, Cuban, and African. My dad is from Africa.
And you're
And
gorgeous. Let's
oh,
just
thank
put
you
that on the table and have it out there.
so much. And so she was like, I grew up in a small town in Montana, and we were speaking Spanish and had to stop because my dad was like, I don't want you guys discriminated against, and she's like, and she has fairly white skin. She's a lighter Cuban woman, but they was still darker than who she was going to
And
school with.
everyone else
Hair
around.
dark and curly and coarse, and so she's like, I went through all of that, and she's like, I'm so sorry, we didn't sit down and really talk through that because I feel like we went through similar experiences, but she's like, looking at you, I felt like you had better experiences than I had. I didn't realize, how heavy it was for you, but I understand it now. And so that's where I think the importance is, like for my generation, I feel like we want to talk to our kids about these things earlier. And not that my parents didn't, it just wasn't their culture at the time. It wasn't how they approached certain things. And so we didn't discuss a lot of those experiences. And so for me, it's like I want to build my kids up, but I also want to talk about what they might face or what they are facing, because you might think they're okay, but you just never
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think parents, I feel like I'm closer to the age of your parents anyway, so I'm just going to say that.
No
But
way. No way.
we're not going to disclose it here because that, we all know about Black Don't Crack. I'm like, I will tell you how old I am later. But I think that there was a time that it's like you don't ask your kids a lot of questions in the first
Yeah.
place.
Right.
Yeah. So you might tell them everything, but you didn't
Yes.
get any input back.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Yeah. I really appreciate the words that you've written. I don't have any girls, but I have all of these nieces that I keep really close to my heart.
Yeah.
And yes, I would be sending them all a book. So if
Oh,
you don't read it today, read it before you're,
right. Yeah.
out the house.
I've had a few high school girls really enjoy it, and that touched my heart because I when I wrote the book, I'm kind of like, these are the age ranges where I feel like it might impact, but I didn't know if the younger generation and the younger girls would really relate to it as much. But I was surprised at how many were like, yeah, we're going through a lot of this already. It helps me to know, you know what I mean, and
Right.
just talk through it. And so I was very pleased with that because that's where it starts. I feel like if I could have built myself up a little earlier,
Yeah.
I would, you know what I mean? Some of the things that I was going through in my 20s and 30s maybe wouldn't have been avoided, but they wouldn't have been so hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of those hard things, they feel hard in the moment, but you don't know how heavy they are
Yes.
until later when they come back up again.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that in dealing with this whole idea of envy, I think I'm staying here just because that was like one of the heaviest chapters.
Yeah.
But it was so good. But you get better. You get better at it. What did you do?
It starts with, like I said, it starts with internal, right? So I'm like, I need to build myself up.
Yeah.
And that's where I talk about in the chapter, confident in admiration. It's like I
Yes.
had to realize that, at the end of the day, I don't want to be the person who looks at somebody and says, I want that. And why does she have that? And it's such a negative cycle. I wanted to look at that person and say, she's got that, and go ahead, girl, and really mean it,
Right.
and it didn't take anything away from me. And so in order to do that, I had to really build myself up. And it really started with some basic things, some self affirmations,
Mhm.
looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and that's weird at first. You're like, man,
Right.
but then you realize, like, I don't even tell myself that enough. That's why it's weird. You know what I'm saying? It's weird
Yeah.
because I don't I have to actually believe what I'm saying. You're beautiful. I am confident. I am strong. I am capable, and really work through that. So just self-affirming messages
Mhm.
is a big start for me. I think journaling was huge for me because it
Huge.
allowed me to see where I was and
Mhm.
where I wanted to go, and help me to kind of peel back the layers of why I was where I was. What am I really feeling? What is the root cause of what I'm going through right now?
Yeah.
And how can I be better? You know what I mean? And where does it start with me? What lies have I told myself for so long that
Mhm.
I need to come back and fight against, and really work through that? So journaling for me, having an outlet, was huge because it allowed me to kind of dissect where I am and where
Mhm.
I have been, what I'm dealing with right now, and what steps do I need to take to get to where I need to go.
Right.
um, Things to just build me up. And I love self-help books. Like,
Yeah.
I love reading and listening to podcasts and things that are going to build me up, because other people have been through similar experiences. You know what I mean? Like, you're not
Yes.
in this alone. So to hear where people have come to as a result of their experiences and the education and the knowledge base they have. So taking that in and picking out, okay, this is what I need to help me with this aspect of my life.
Mhm.
But all of this to say, it really started with myself. Like, how do I carve out space for myself, um, to build myself up, not from all of these other external sources, not by comparing myself, but to
Right.
just start from within.
Mhm.
And like I said, kind of diagnose myself. Where am I low? Like, where is my self love bank low? Why is it low? And how do I work on filling that up by myself?
Yeah.
And not what society's going to give me, not what my friends are going to give me, not what my
Right.
husband's going to give me, not what my friends or my kids are going to get me, but just me. How do I
Yeah.
build myself up in from the inside out? So those are kind of some steps that I really had to take, and really just learn to build up my self-love. And I know that sounds simple. It's maybe overly
It's
simplified,
not
but
even easy. It's not
it's
even
not
remotely easy.
easy. It's not easy, and like I said, it's still a work in progress. Like, some days I'm batting 100,
Right.
and I'm doing my affirmations, and I'm
Yeah.
waking up early, and I'm getting my meditation in, and I'm reading my self-help book, whatever it is for the moment. I'm getting a chapter in, and I'm feeling really refreshed for the day, and I've got the tools I need. And some days I'm like, I don't want to do that. And then it trickles down, and then I'm like, now I'm feeling low. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so I have to lift myself back up again. And so it is a work in progress. It's not easy, but I will say my daughter has helped me a lot too. And I say my daughter because she's 5 now. My son is 2. So we'll do the same thing as well. He's just not quite there yet to care.
He's just really good
But
with snuggles, and that's where we
yeah,
keep it. Yeah.
exactly. But she, like, we would, when I would take her to school, on the ride in the morning, like, we would do self affirmations together. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Mhm.
it's that accountability, right? So it's like, I'm doing it for me, but now I'm doing it for her as well. And it would make us both feel good and kind of change the trajectory of the day. So, and we would always end our self affirmations with, I'm a girl and I can do anything.
Anything.
I'm telling you, like, something about those self affirmations, it just helps your mood. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's been the biggest start, is just looking internal and trying to build myself up in any way I can.
Yeah. Did you find that all that you had to surround yourself with more images, more people who were like you in the ways that you were struggling with yourself?
Yeah, you know what? I do feel like there is something to be said for surrounding yourself with people who are equally yoked. Um,
The
you
way
know,
you said it.
yeah, because
The way you said it.
yeah, because listen, there are times where I am definitely I like to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to attract people who need me to invest in them, and I want to invest in them.
Right.
But sometimes that can drain me,
I was gonna
right?
say that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah, and I love it. I love to help other people, but at some point in time when I was realizing, well, I need help,
Mm-hmm.
I had to start to kind of snip some of them dead ends away,
Mm-hmm.
because it was sucking my energy. And while my intention was good to help, them come along, it was also leaving me with nothing to help myself.
Right.
When I started to surround myself with people who were equally yoked, people who were trying to, build themselves up and had purpose and had drive, or even had things that I didn't have that I
Mm-hmm.
wanted. And I'm like learning, like, how do I get that? And they're teaching me, and you know what I'm saying? And you're
Yeah.
on this trajectory where you both want to propel yourselves forward. You don't want to stay stuck in a place of, you know, negativity, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah.
And I realized how much more fulfilled I felt and how much more capable I felt to do the things I needed to do for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's hard, because sometimes those friendships or those relationships are ones you've had for a
A
really long,
long time.
and they're not necessarily a bad friend. It's just that where you are in your time of life is just not the same. And in order for you to grow, you have to you have to continue to move in a direction that they're not moving. And maybe, you come back at some point, but sometimes you have to let that
Let
go
them
so
go.
that you can, yeah, so that you can continue to excel and go down the path that you are destined to go, and not hold yourself back from that. So that was also a hard lesson, because like I said, I'm a people pleaser, and I'm a helper. And so
Mm-hmm.
sometimes to leave somebody, what feels like leave somebody behind, felt like I wasn't doing what I needed to do for them. But it is okay to
Yeah.
put yourself first sometimes, and it's also necessary
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And like I said, you gotta snip dead ends off, because it's just like flowers, right? You gotta prune them dead flowers
Yes.
off so that they
Yeah.
can
So everything else can grow.
continue to bloom. Yeah. If you
Yes.
don't, that energy is just grown to the dead flower, and you have nothing as a result of that. And so I have to remind myself, and I think that is also hard for the younger generation,
Mm-hmm.
because they want to, and that was hard for me as a teenager. You want to be around friends that are cool and whatever,
Yes.
but realizing that they're not equally yoked, then it actually has pulled you and sunk you into a place where you didn't need to be. It's
Yeah.
influenced you to do things you wouldn't otherwise do. And so yeah, it was a lesson that I had to learn. But and I'm realizing that now, actually me and my husband, it's funny because we're in our 30s, but even in our 20s we got married young. So we were experiencing things that our friends weren't, right? They were
Right.
out partying and everything, and we're like in a just a totally different phase of life, trying to figure out marriage and living together, and
Right.
where we want to be in a few years. And so we realized early, like we kind of were old souls, you know,
Yeah.
so we started to surround ourselves with people who were older a little bit because that they had been through some of the things that we were going through, and they could give us advice and encouragement. Whereas some of our single friends they supported us and they were good, but they didn't understand what we were going through. And then some other single friends just didn't understand it or agree with it at all, and they're going to give you bad advice.
Terrible advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful with that as well. Is who are you going to seek out advice, and who are you venting to? Because not everybody has your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, for us, we joke we're old souls. Like we love to be around older people who have gone through some things and experienced life and can give us those gems, because
Yeah.
then we feel like, okay, we've,
Got a
you
little bit of wisdom to work
yeah,
with.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah. I'm listening to you, tell me a little bit about your life here. And I'm thinking at some point with feeling like you're a people pleaser, I'm not going to touch it because it's going to make me cry. I'm going to come back to it. I'm like, I'm so tired of crying. I'm over it.
that's where we at. That's what the rib is about. Being vulnerable
Yeah.
and just being real. Tell me. I want to know.
Well, I mean, okay, let me touch a different point. When you're talking about taking care of yourself, have you ever heard the whole analogy from an airplane, like put your mask on first before you help the people next to you?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, okay, so obviously the obvious metaphor here is if you don't take care of yourself, you don't help yourself, you can't help other people.
Yes.
But why do you have to be told to take care of yourself? It's like we just grow up with this sense.
Especially women, right? We
Yes.
have, even if you don't have kids,
Yeah.
women by nature, one, and by society, two, have kind of been told that everybody else has to go before us.
Right.
And so once we step into a place that feels like it's selfish because we're putting ourselves first, it's not. We're just taking care of ourselves. But
Right.
it's a mind game, because we have been kind of accustomed to everybody has to go before me. If I put myself first, that's selfish.
That is selfish. And then you derive a lot of your own self-worth from serving.
Exactly. And then all of a sudden you fall into guilt. Oh, I did put myself first. Now what's going now, now I feel guilty because this that didn't happen. And I play those games now, even still. Like I feel, there's certain things I want to do, and I'm like, I want to get this done, but then I'm like, oh well, but my daughter needs this, my son needs this, my husband needs to do this, and there's not time for that. There's no time for that. I can do that anytime. You put yourself last, and you're so right. When it's basic life saving skills are, you can't help anybody else if you don't help yourself first. And it's like, that is the same mindset we need to have going through this journey of life. We need to take care of self. We need to make sure that as we're checking in with everybody else, we've already checked in with ourselves to be sure that we're good. Because if I'm trying to fill your cup from an empty tank, there ain't nothing.
It's nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, there is nothing to give. And so that you're absolutely right. And I do feel like it's something that we as women in general just need to do better at, is just acknowledging that we have the right, we are justified to put ourselves first as often as we need to be sure that we are taken care of, and that we are good to take on whatever it is that life is presenting us, and to give us that freedom to do that. You know what I mean? To give ourselves that ability and that mindset just to live and move freely in that space of, I deserve this, and I need this for my health, for my sanity, for my growth. All of a sudden you're like, if you can just convince yourself of that, all of a sudden you're free of some of the other things that we attach to it. Like I said, guilt for one, and I say guilt because
Guilt is so
that
good.
is something that I struggle with, you know. It's like I feel guilty. I feel guilty if mom wants to go take a bath uninterrupted. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I feel guilty in that time. I'm sitting in the bath like this feels good, but now I feel guilty. It's like, no, relax, be in this space, allow yourself to be free in that moment, you know, and give yourself that restoration that you need.
I really appreciate that that is something you believe in, because I mean, the way you express it, it's just like, yep, okay, she said it. Let's all do that now.
And you know what? The other thing is sometimes you have to schedule it out.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm realizing I don't do that enough is I don't schedule the me time, and whatever that needs to be, you know, maybe it's early in the morning, maybe it's a day, or you know, that you put on your calendar once a month, maybe it's a couple hours here and there, but sometimes in order to get that stuff done, you have to literally schedule it out, you
Yeah.
know, because otherwise we tend to put ourselves on the back burner, and it's just not fair, and it's not right. It's this narrative we've told ourselves for way too long.
Yeah.
And we just need to do better at that.
You know, so then what's another step? There's self-care.
Yeah.
There was something that, of course, it caught my eye because I completely understand. Straightening your hair. Like,
Yeah.
I have gone through this battle in my head over and over. Should I just go natural? I remember there were years that I have one brother, he'd call me, he's like, it's time for you to go natural. I'm like, sir, you have no idea how long it takes to get ready. I'm like,
Right.
this is not about looking like somebody else.
This hair, because going natural ain't easy. It's a lot of work.
And you want to talk about scheduling. Natural
Right.
hair is all about scheduling.
Exactly.
I'm like, and that is not an art that I have mastered. But I appreciate that there are certain things that you just said, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, right? It's so going back to step one for me, it's realizing that it starts within, right? And then number two, it's relieving yourself of that guilt, and realizing that your worth, it you have worth. Let's just say
Right.
that you have worth, and your worth is enough to put yourself first. And then number three is basic, like there are certain things that you don't have to accept, you know. There are certain things that you can say, I release myself of that, and I will no longer accept that because I am not, that devalues who I am.
Yeah.
And whether that be a friendship, a relationship, a judgment that you have on yourself,
Self.
you know, a judgment somebody else is placing on you,
Yeah.
you have to, like, you know, basically just stand up for yourself and stand up for what you believe is right.
Yeah.
And, you know, some people may feel like that's harsh, but guess what? They're not your people. And you have to come to that space where it's like, you know what? This is what I stand for because it represents who I am, and I'm standing up for myself in this moment, and I'm standing strong. And if, you know, I lose people as a result of that, or if I lose things as a result of that,
Yeah.
it wasn't meant for me, you know?
You
So,
know, that speak on, there was that whole idea you had a friend who felt like maybe offended at something you had done,
yeah,
and you're like, what? I'm just gonna listen to this. And then
yeah,
you did the replay that we all do, and then you
yeah,
came back and you hit her with the facts.
yeah.
Talk to me
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, I've had to do that multiple times since that point. It was like my training period, right?
Right.
But yeah, for so long, but you know, I was the people pleaser, and you can't be a people pleaser and put yourself first all the time. Like it
Yeah.
just, oh, not that you can't, but it may conflict in moments,
Right.
right?
People pleasing
So you
definitely.
may accept things
Yeah.
that you shouldn't just to please a person when really, you know, you didn't deserve that type of a treatment, or that wasn't true on, you know, whatever they were speaking wasn't true on you, but you're accepting it because you don't want to ruffle feathers. You just want to, you know,
Be a
whatever.
peacemaker.
So I was kind of coming to this realization that, you know, if I'm going to love myself, if I'm going to value myself as I should, there's also certain things that I should no longer accept, which is what we're talking about. And one of those is how people will treat me and how people will view me, and, my
Yes.
worry about that. And in this particular situation, there was a friend who was offended by something I said. And it wasn't even anything they, in my opinion, needed to be offended by.
Mhm.
Um, and but I sat and I listened. I took that in, and then I had to hold up and say, hey, wait. Sometimes you have to own your own feelings in a situation. It had nothing to do with you, but you made it about you.
Right.
And that has nothing to do with me,
Me.
but that has a lot to do with you. And I'm sorry you felt that way, but you need to go back and look at yourself, because I won't apologize for something that I, really needs no apology, basically. You know what I mean? On my behalf.
Yeah.
It's going to take some work on your side to figure out why you took that in the way you did.
Mhm.
And it took a lot for me to get there, because I had to realize that conversation might lend itself to, we're not going to be friends anymore.
Right.
But then it's kind of that internal dialogue of, well, if you're not going to be friends anymore, was that person really your person? And are you at the space of your life where you're ready to snip those dead ends off,
Right.
snip those dead those dead flowers, and allow space to bloom elsewhere?
Right.
Um, and just continue to value yourself, to stand up for yourself. And it's hard. I'm not going to say that that's easy. I'm not going to say that that's easy. And as you grow in your path, as you go down your journey, again, like we said, sometimes your paths do
Yeah.
this, they
Yeah.
stay that way. Sometimes they'll bring you back together. And I've had friends both ways, where
Mhm.
we've grown apart, we found ourselves back together, and it was a beautiful thing, because at that point we were more mature, and
Right.
we had a deeper sense of who we were individually. So
Mhm.
we weren't trying to nitpick at each
Right.
other for silly things. I've had friends where, it was the time that we were, meant to
Yeah.
be friends. And then after that time, we grew apart, and that's just it. And you wish them the best. But we weren't equally yoked anymore. We weren't
Right.
on the same trajectory anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And so I do feel like there comes a point in time where people will only give you what you continually allow, right?
That's true. Yeah.
And so if you don't stand up for yourself, if you accept things that you shouldn't accept, well, guess what? It's going to continue to come to you,
Yeah.
because um, they basically are giving you what you put out. If you put your foot down and you say, I am no longer accepting this, because that is not who I am, that is
Mhm.
not my value, um, then all of a sudden people start to treat you like what you're worth. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And those that won't do that, again, they're not your people.
Right.
You got to go.
I'm not deep into pop culture because
Yeah.
like I've aged out of pop culture. But do you remember back in the day when Nicki Minaj was talking about if they give you the pickle juice and you drink the pickle juice, they're gonna keep bringing you pickle juice?
Exactly. No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's like you just can't accept anything.
Yeah.
By doing that, you devalue yourself. And it's hard, especially if you're a people pleaser. It's so
Yes.
hard to say, like, I'm no longer going to accept this, but it's a critical step in my mind
Mhm.
in growing, in
Yeah.
developing who you are and who you want to become, and your overall confidence and self-worth.
Yeah. The concept of setting and holding boundaries is a
Yes,
huge measure of self-love. It's
yes,
a huge way to show yourself I have respect for my own
yes,
feelings, like and for my own experiences. Enough to
yes,
say you've got to stop. And if you
yes.
don't want to stop, then you need to not be here anymore.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah. And so where's the hope? Where's the hope in all this? Where does it get lighter?
You know what? I think I am almost an obnoxiously hopeful person, I think, sometimes. And that's because I feel like I'm a woman of faith, right?
Hmm.
The rib is rooted in faith in Christianity, and I
Right.
feel that is the message of Jesus Christ, that
Hmm.
he gives us hope for our future. And I feel like, as we journey through life, it can get clouded. Um, Sometimes you're at the valleys of life and you're on
Right.
this uphill climb. And so you don't really see where you're headed until you get to the peak and you go, oh, wow, look
Yeah.
at how far I've come. You know what I mean? Like, look
Yeah.
at this beautiful area surrounding me. And then you realize I still got a ways to go, but that's okay. You know what I mean? That's okay. And so I feel like there's a lot of hope to be had in our life, and if we can hold on to that, if
Mhm.
we can maintain our hope, then we we give ourselves the ability to achieve and accomplish and grow and to just continually evolve and become who it is that we want to become. If we lose hope, then we lose the every power within
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
to continue to move forward. You know what I mean? So hope is so important. It's so important for ourselves. It's so important for our communities. It's so important for our society, that we just, even as dark as things get and as dark as things have been heavy between COVID and just, you know,
The
the
social climate.
yes, the social climate, it's heavy right now. But I feel like we can't get lost in all of the negativity so much so that we 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 don't see that there is potentially light,
Mhm.
not potentially, there is light at the end of the
Right.
tunnel, and we just have to keep working towards it.
Yeah.
And it might be hard, it might be tiresome, but we can get there. We have to remain hopeful that we can get there. So that's kind of where I rest my
Yeah.
I rest my hope. I rest my head and my thoughts and my prayers on, is just that, that we're gonna get there. We're gonna accomplish what it is that we want to accomplish. We're gonna become who it is we want to become.
Yeah.
That there's hope for our future generations. It's scary, we can't
Yeah.
deny that. But as long as we keep putting one foot in front of the other and encouraging each other to do better, um, there's always hope in my mind.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like the way you put that. And I don't know if I'm saying this the way you said it, but to not be bogged down with all the heaviness and to keep hope in
Yeah.
pursuing the light, in pursuing the light at the end of the trouble or tunnel, not the trouble, the
Yeah.
tunnel. Yeah.
No,
Getting there.
yeah, no, that was perfectly said. I feel like, yeah, as long as you're gonna feel bogged down some days,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's okay to acknowledge that. I
Yeah.
think we don't need to live in a world where it's just like Pollyanna, and it's like, we're not being truthful with how we feel, or truthful with
Right.
how acknowledge that,
Mhm.
let's acknowledge it. Let's acknowledge where we are, but let's also keep moving forward, because as we keep moving forward, no matter how far we go, eventually, if we keep putting one foot in front of the other, we'll get there. And so for me, the rib is a lot about hope. It's a
Yeah.
lot about, this is where I am right now, but today I resolve that, I will have help, and that's for today. You know what I mean? And so just accomplishing things little by little, and tomorrow it'll be something else. And that's the little pieces that I just kind of hold on to onto that rope to kind of carry me forward. And that's why I ended each chapter the way I did, with
With,
kind of a message of hope, really.
yes.
Today I resolve, and whatever that today I resolve is for you. Like, today I resolve to have hope. Like, let's
Mhm.
let's be hopeful that tomorrow the future is brighter, that tomorrow, we will see some sort of change, and tomorrow I will be better than I was yesterday. And I think sometimes, people feel like they have to bite off such a big piece for
Right.
change. And I think hope really lies in the small steps that we take, the
Mhm.
small low hanging fruits that we can gather from time to time, you know, day to day. It's small, it's very small, and the more that we can acknowledge those small steps that we're making
Mhm.
and those small movements, those small incremental changes, the more we realize like it's possible to get there. You know, it if you only focus on the big goals and the big objective changes and, you know, the big pieces that you're trying to bite off, then it feels very distant, and hope is
Right.
hard to keep, right? Hope is
Yeah.
hard to keep alive. But if we can focus on the little things that we're doing day to day, the small changes that are being made, I think hope we're able to like hold on to our hope.
I love it. That's beautiful. What are you going to do? You have this book. This book is
Yeah.
wonderful, and I want everybody in the world to read this book. It's such a good book. So then where do you go from here?
You know, I've asked myself that time and time again. I feel like writing another book may be in the cards, but I want it to be as authentic. For me, I want it to be as authentic as the first one was. I don't want it to be forced.
Right.
Um, so I hope that's in the cards for me, writing another book, excuse me, to help other people. Um, for now, it's investing in my kids. It's giving them these messages so that they can carry forward um, and grow into the beautiful beings they're supposed to be, so that their purpose can be felt. Because I feel like, um, you know, so much of what we need the world to be starts at home.
Oh, it
So for
does.
it's investing in them and giving them the tools they need.
Mhm.
The second thing is just continually to develop myself as a human being, to continue to grow in the way that I'm supposed to go, to continue to journey forward and continue to learn the things that I need to do to impact change in this world. Because I think right now, especially, we're living in a time where we need everybody. You know, we need
Yes.
everybody to wake up and to be working towards their purpose, because ultimately that helps us as a whole.
As a
And so
whole.
for me, I want to do my part. So a lot of it has been learning, you know, what is it that I can do in my community? What active changes can I stand for? What things can I speak about? But I think also a large part of my purpose is to inspire other people. So
Oh,
to,
well, you
to
got that
I
one.
hope, I hope that that's kind of a goal of mine, is to help people continue to hold on to their hope and to be inspired, to continue, even though it's hard. And I know you probably, you know, can empathize with this, but you know, when you start a business, it's hard. Sometimes you question everything about it, you know,
Yeah.
and you're like, do I want to, is anybody listening? Does anybody care? You know, but just to realize that whoever it's helping, like I want to continue to show up for them,
Mhm.
because I do believe that that helps the larger whole of this community, of this world. And so I want to continue to be a light to other people, and I just want to continue to just really just journey forward. I'm at this space in my life where, you know, I used to project so much of what I wanted to do and when am I going to get there. And right now I'm just trying to work on being patient and content and listening to what
Okay.
the world is sending me, what the energies are bringing to me, and what God is saying. You know, this is, instead of telling him what I want to do, I'm like, okay, let me listen to where I'm supposed to go.
Is that
Uh,
not the hardest thing in the world, to get
it's
out of your own way?
so hard. It is so, so hard. So, yeah, I think right now it's just continue to journey forward, continue to inspire and encourage other people on their journeys as well, and just to do my part
Yeah.
and make a change.
You know, I felt like we were like gonna wind this down, but now I have a question. Like, now I have another one.
Good.
Um, talk about patience, because so you're right. Right now, the world is very heavy, and it's
Yeah.
heavy for everybody, you know, whether you want to see things or you don't want to see things, or you want to change things or you don't want to change, no matter who you are, the world is heavy right now, right? And you have this chapter on patience, which again was like a kick in the face. I'm like, fine, okay, fine. I can do this. But talk about being patient with, I guess, with the process. Patience with the process is something, but also just being patient in general, just with
Right.
life.
Yeah. I think, again, right, our society tells us we got to get there fast, we got to do this, we got to do that, and it's great to be. I'm very goal driven. I
Mhm.
am very, I set my mind to something. I want to do it. I want to attack it. Okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? And that's great. But I think in the midst of that, we lose sight of just contentment, of just that ability, like I said, to get to the peak of the mountain and look back, and take a step back and go, look, I've done all of it. I climbed this mountain,
Yeah.
and I think so many of us don't do that. We don't give ourselves the space to just be present in that one moment and to acknowledge all that we've accomplished so far. We are just constantly trying to grind forward and forward and forward and forward. And how do we go faster? And how do we get there in this instantaneous society, right? Where,
Mhm.
everything has to happen right now. Patience is really hard to get. It's just really hard to get. It's hard to be in control of. Um, it's a very mindful technique. At this point, patience is like a skill, right? That's like
Right.
because it's hard. It's so hard to have. So I can't even say that again, this is one that I've conquered all the way, but I am definitely learning the importance of finding contentment in my life because whenever you reach that goal, there's always going to be another goal and another goal and another goal.
Yeah.
And if you don't take time to acknowledge what you've accomplished so far, where you've been, all you've been through, then you really can't appreciate the goals either. You know what I
Right.
mean? You can't appreciate the accomplishments along the way either because you haven't really taken time to just appreciate everything around you and where you've come from. So
Right.
for me, practicing patience really starts again, like internally, like waking up in the morning,
Mm.
taking deep breaths, slowing down, you know what I mean? Not
Mhm.
hopping out of the bed, rushing, ready to go. But it's just like really in every movement that we do throughout the day, finding that time to just breathe and just to focus and just be mindful of where you are in that very moment. And that is really very hard to do, but very important for us to do, especially during this time.
Right.
When we were at home, locked down for quarantine, and you don't know how long you're going to be home, none of us expected it to be like this.
Yeah.
Kids' school canceled, and you're like, okay, how are we going to manage all of this stuff?
Right.
And you're going like, you're so irritated, right, by
Mhm.
everything that's closing down and all the things that are happening to you. I had to say, you know what? Let me just stop for a minute. This is actually a gift,
Yeah.
Like for my husband, he travels quite a bit. I'm like, this is the most time he's ever had consecutively with his family. And so that's a gift. Like, let me not be so wrapped up in what's not going. Let
Yeah.
me take a minute to pause, to
Mhm.
reflect on where we are, and to be grateful. And so I think patience and gratitude also go hand in hand. When you take time
Absolutely.
to pause and to find the gratitude in the moment, you can take a breath and you can be content and patient with the process. And I think that's what we need to exercise even in this kind of climate right now where we're talking about race more, we're talking about inequalities. I feel like we have to exercise patience with each other
Yeah.
because while some people want to remain blind to what's happening,
Mhm.
most people want to learn. It's
Yeah.
just it's going to take time. you know, everybody's at a different pace. And
Yeah.
so I think the more we can exercise patience with each other, not in the sense that we're not trying to
We're
move
not
forward.
progressing, but yes.
We're not talking about it, but
Mhm.
that in the moments when we're having these conversations and, people are learning, we just have to be patient with the process. It's going to take some time. And it's hard to exercise patience because some of the stuff, it's like, we shouldn't be dealing with this anymore.
Right. I've
It
been
feels,
patient for my whole
I've
life.
been, yeah, it
Mhm.
feels like I've been patient, but as soon as we lose focus and we lose sight of patience and mindfulness and gratitude, it's really hard to continue to be effective in change.
There you
And
go.
so I feel like it's just taking moments throughout the day
Yeah.
to be grateful, to find gratitude, to get a breath in,
Mhm.
and that kind of helps rejuvenate you and recharge you to move forward. So that's been my experience. It's still hard, even with my kids. It's like
Kids are
my 2 year
different.
old in a tantrum, and it's really hard, right, to just sit there.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I mean? There's nothing you can do with those tantrums. And I want to fix it. I want to fix it. I want to fix it.
Mhm.
But the more I try and fix it, the more
The
angry he
bigger.
becomes. Yeah, the bigger it becomes. So to sit there and to be calm and just to wait, I'm like, okay, are you ready? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, and that's hard. It is literally a tool that we need to all practice. And I really do. I feel like it starts with how we start our day, with how we
Mhm.
move through our day.
Yeah.
Again, for me, all of these big objectives, patience and goal setting and self love and self care, it starts so small.
So
It starts
small.
so small. And the smaller that you can keep it, the more achievable and the more we can withhold it. The more
Yeah.
we can kind of make it a part of our practice
Right.
consistently.
Right. It's
So
interesting because I've never thought of I've thought of patience plenty of times because it's not something I have in abundance, but I've never thought of, yeah, patience and mindfulness really do go hand in hand.
yes.
Just,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Helped me a lot actually as I learned more about what it means to be mindful. um i have I've realized that I have an ability to be more patient, because it's
Mhm.
just taking that moment to breathe, to whatever maybe it's prayer, maybe it's meditation, whatever it is for you, but taking
Yes.
that in, it's an art,
Yeah.
truly art. And but mindfulness, I really feel like mindfulness, gratitude, and patience are just like this.
Right. Right. Yeah. Keep those together for sure.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of these thoughts and this wisdom today. Thank you.
So much, Pella. I appreciate you having me. This is
Like we're like friends from like
right,
and we just haven't caught up lately.
right. It's awesome. Well, thank you for having this podcast.
Oh, thank you for just agreeing to be here. Thank you so, so much. I am so excited for your future because, first of all, you already said the right names up front, the people that kind of have already pioneered the path that you want to go. Brene
Yeah,
Brown. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I see it.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to.
I hope that the doors bust open for you in that direction. I do.
Thank you so much.
So tell the people where they can find you.
So I am on Instagram at The Rib Diaries. I have a website called theribdiary.com. You can email me at Vanessa at The Rib Diary. And the book is available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and then obviously through my website as well.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Everybody go get the book. Check it out. Read it. It's wonderful.
Yes. So good to see you.
Oh, same. So officially we're done. So now just I'm like,
Thank you so much. This was
no,
wonderful. This is
you
so wonderful.
are brilliant. And on top of that, gorgeous, but brilliant.
How
Like
old are you? Okay,
brilliant.
I need to know, how old are you?